Hey everybody. Well, for today's video, I'm going to do some post-production work on a render that I recently completed. It's going to show you some tricks that you can do with the new Wolf 2.0 from AM, which is a new Wolf model that I like to use. Uh, Plus, we'll do some work in Photomatix for some color enhancement. Should be a lot of fun. So, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I have a render here that I recently finished, and I'm ready to do some post-production work on it. This one features the new Wolf 2.0 by AM that you can get on daz3d.com, and I'll have a link for that in the notes to this video. It's a pretty good Wolf model. It comes with a look at my hair fur preset, which is how I rendered all this fur here. But the way that works is the hair is all one color. And I want the tips of this wolf's hair to be white. So what I did was I rendered it a second time, and just that section with the wolf there is a white wolf preset, so I rendered it with white as well. What I'm going to do is copy this whole, well, we'll select it all first, and copy it, and paste that into our main image. Now I'm going to have to line those two up. That takes a little bit of work, but it's easier if you make this layer transparent. And we go to our move tool and move it to try to get it right on top there. We'll try to line it up by the noses there. And it helps if you zoom way in, you can actually line up the individual pixels. And I like to pick a feature. Well, in this case, I'll pick the eyes. Let's see how that looks. Not quite there. There we go. And that's lined up. So we'll get that opacity all the way back up. And we're going to make this a solid layer. Just do this by clicking on this little sheet of paper down here. And let's zoom back out a bit. So now I've got my white wolf on top of the black wolf. And actually, I'm going to reverse that a little bit. I'm going to go down to the layer underneath that, select everything, copy, and paste. I think you can paste as a new layer. And we'll move that layer up over the white wolf. So now we have the dark colored wolf on top of the white wolf on top of the dark color again. Make those all visible. And what I'm going to do is just take the eraser and a nice soft brush, which is what I already have here, and make it pretty big. And I can just kind of go along. Whoop, that's too big. Let's undo that. Kind of get a nice sized brush here. How about that? Now I can kind of go along the edges and give this wolf some white tips to his fur. Now I might need to do some tricks here with the depth map, because I don't necessarily like the look of this too much. It's a little bit too harsh. So let's undo that. We'll keep our white out here. Let me do some white along up here. And down along this rim here. You see how her the strings to her thing didn't change because only the wolf's fur color has changed. If it's a little too harsh, you can always undo it and lower the opacity of the eraser. That's a bit better. Now for this side of the wolf, we got to be a little trickier. So I'm going to load the depth map, which is I always say the depth map whenever I'm rendering. So I'm going to load that up. Now the depth map is just a grayscale image where things that are closer are darker. And what I'm going to do is zoom in here on the wolf's head. So what I'm going to do now is go to Colors and Threshold. And that lets me kind of pick the point at where it's going to set it all to either black or white based on the grayness. What I'm going to do is just kind of search around right here. Looks good, where I can kind of get the wolf's hair over here kind of separated out. Click OK. Select all, copy, and let's paste it into the right one. Paste. Alright, I'm going to make a solid layer out of that. And that, and then select by color and select by black. And I can just throw that layer in the trash can. And now, if I come through with that eraser, I'm not getting that underlying here. I'm just getting sort of that hair on his cheeks. So now I can remove that selection. And now I've kind of got that hair over here lightened up. Let's do a little bit of this ear right here as well. All right. So now I've fixed that wolf up a bit. Maybe I'll do his tail as well. Let's go with a bigger, here, we'll zoom in on the tail first. And go back with our eraser tool here. We're still at kind of halfway opacity. I'll do it 50%. Let's make the size of that brush a bit bigger. And we'll give him some whitish tips to his fur up here. And maybe a bit on the back of his leg. I see some fixes I'm going to have to do here where the fur is a little too thin. Alright, so let's zoom back out. A little bit further. That's about as far out as I can zoom here. So for the next step, this color is all a bit drab. I'm going to do some color enhancement. So first thing I do is close these images that I don't need anymore. So we don't need the depth map anymore. I'm not going to save any changes that I made to them. And now we'll do some color enhancement. I'm going to show you how to use some Photomatix for that. Now Photomatix is a photo enhancing tool. It's made to make HDR, which is high dynamic range photos, where you take three exposures, 3 levels of exposures, and combine them together. And typically you'd create these 3 exposures using 3 shutter speeds on a camera. But we're going to kind of fake it out with our with GIMP here and create 3 sort of pseudo exposures. Now the first thing to keep in mind is that Photomatix assumes that your light source is actually coming from the left and going towards the right. So we're going to just reverse this picture for this phase here. And the various filters are going to work a bit better that way. Oh, I just realized I forgot to do something. Let's undo that reverse there. We got to collapse these 3 layers. So let's layers menu. And you can't really see off to the side. Let's. What I'm going to do is flatten the image. But it's going to be a little bit off camera here. But anyway, I've flattened this image into one image. Now we'll reverse it. And I'm just going to save this off to the desktop. I have to export it as a. Here we go to the desktop. Woman with wolf. It has to be a JPEG for it to work in Photomatix, so we'll export that. And I'm going to keep it up as high a quality as I can. Photomatix does have a little bit of problem with JPEG compression. The next thing I'm going to do is create a dark exposure. And to do that, I'm going to go up to Colors, and the first thing I'm going to actually do is reduce the saturation a bit. So we'll set that down to -50. That's going to make it a little bit closer to black and white. And then I'm going to go to Levels. I'm going to pull the darks up to about this first line here, and the midtones up to about halfway through the next section. And we'll export that. And I'll just put the name dark after that, just to give it a different file name. And I'm going to undo that twice. Undo our level change and undo our saturation change. And for the light, we don't need to worry about the saturation as much. For the light, the overexposure, we'll just go to Levels, Colors, Levels. And I'm going to move the light values down a quadrant here, and the midtones down about half another. And that creates my overexposure. So we'll just export that. And instead of dark, we'll call this one Light. Alright, and now it's time to fire up Photomatix. Okay, so here we are in Photomatix. And what I'm going to do is click this Load Bracketed Photos button and browse to the desktop. And I'm going to shift select those 3 images. We had woman with wolf. I have a few others here from when I was doing some tests. I'm going to control click the light and the dark. And then click OK on those. Now, after waiting a few moments, this will load up here. The exposure values of +2 and -2 are pretty good for the settings we used back in GIMP, so we'll just click OK on that. All this stuff is for aligning actual photos, so just uncheck everything. Alright, so when Photomatix finishes up, well, we'll close this histogram here. We don't need that. You have defaults that you can pick to apply to your image. And you can kind of just go search around for the one that you think looks best. Now I like to use this enhanced one here, and then go over here to the slider and make a few adjustments of my own. I don't think that one quite caught on. There it goes. Make a few adjustments of my own. You can actually spend all day trying to get these sliders just right, so I'm going to go through here real quick just for the sake of this tutorial. Let's see, color saturation up a bit. Oh, that's good for now. Once you get the sliders where you want them, click on the process button. And then once it's done, you could do some color enhancement here. I just do it in GIMP. Let's go up here though, and we'll save this image. And then with that, we'll go back to GIMP. Right, so here we are back in GIMP, and I realized I left it at the overexposed version, so let's undo that. And now I'm going to go and open. And go up to the desktop. And here's our wolf with woman dark light tone map. That's the file name Photomatix picked. And we'll select all of that. And copy it. And we'll paste it over our original. Now you could just go and work directly on the image that Photomatix produced, but sometimes it overdoes things a little bit, and I like to tone things back, and I can show you how to do that in just a minute, but let's zoom in. We'll have a quick look at our girl here. So this is you can always see how much of a difference Photomatix make by turning on and off the layer. You can see it really does a pretty good job of enhancing a lot of colors. Now it might be like I said, it might look a little overburned. You can always reduce the opacity of that layer, and I like to do it around 75%. That still makes a difference, but doesn't look too overdone. And then maybe before you even merge that layer down, you might want to go in and adjust some more colors and such. Let's go into levels here. And maybe lighten it up a bit in the midtones and darken it in the dark tones. There we go. It's a little bit of subtle difference, but I like it a bit better, so we'll click OK there. And we'll merge those layers down. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I just need to anchor that layer. Alright, and just like that, I've done some, well, let's reverse it back here. So she's right-handed again. So, and just like that, I've done some nice color enhancement on my image. So, I think with that, we'll call this one done. So thanks, everybody, and good night.